The Egyptians saw the scorpion as a guardian of thresholds, a creature tied to death, not as an end, but as a transition to a new phase of existence. What does this full moon in the sign of the scorpion mean for us? Over the last 6 months, we've been experiencing a very challenging event, the Mars-Pluto opposition. And about 2 weeks ago, we experienced the third and final exact opposition between these two planets. They are still opposed to each other, but the aspect is starting to wane, it's starting to separate. However, here we find ourselves at this Scorpio full moon. So I see this as the last final death throes of this event because Mars and Pluto are said to be the two planets that rule over the sign of Scorpio. Now, what this means is these two planets and the sign have a strong affinity with each other, a lot of overlap in meaning. So now we're experiencing this last wave of emotional and psychological intensity that we are experiencing as a collective more so than we normally do. Scorpio is a water sign, and all water signs are connected to the emotional plane. So too is the moon itself. Here we find ourselves at the full moon event, where the moon fully reflecting the light of the sun at maximum power in a sign it is powerful in, the water sign of Scorpio. The moon is connected to the word luna. So people during the full moon at maximum power are more lunatic or lunatic, which is to say more emotionally reactive. And the scorpionic subset of emotions tend to be in the more intense variety. As I said at the beginning, the scorpion is the symbol of transformation. It's the process of transforming our inner wounds and traumas and hurts and pain and heaviness into love and light. It's the great shamanic process, soul retrieval collectively, just to use a term that the shamans like. They have this belief that when a soul experiences a great trauma, whether in this life or a past life, it's like a shard of their soul has gotten broken off at that location, the lower astral hell worlds, so to speak. And then you can work with the shaman. They can journey into the underworld, which is very scorpionic and Plutonian symbolism. They work with their spirit guides or their animal helpers that guides the shaman to that location, the astral plane, so that they can recover the lost soul shard to help the person return to completeness, a soul retrieval. So yes, this event is very intense, but if we contemplate the evolutionary purpose of this event, not only collectively, but on an individual basis as well, it is a time of deep, deep healing potentially. Since people, generally speaking, will be more lunatic over the next 7 to 10 days, they'll be functioning more from reflexive behavior, how they feel, not necessarily how they think. This is especially true for folks who have sensitive planets in their own personal charts, around the degrees of 15 to 29 degrees of any of the fixed signs. So Scorpio, Taurus, Aquarius, and Leo. About 6 or 7 weeks ago, I did the most important video I will do all year, and that is the video about Neptune entering the sign of Aries. Doesn't happen very often, Neptune changing signs. And it speaks to the evolutionary task for us really over the next 14 or 15 years, as Neptune, the mystic, works with Aries, the warrior. And one of the primary focuses of that video was talking about the concept of spiritual warfare, the classic battle between good and evil, demons and angels, which of course has always been going on throughout history. But this hitting a fever pitch and being so obvious within the collective, again, over the next 14 years. And sure enough, right on cue, here we have, during this very intense Scorpio full moon, Mars opposed to Pluto, the last hurrah, the last spike. Meanwhile, spiritual warfare, Neptune and Aries. Pakistan and India are on the brink of war, seemingly. where we had some religious fanatics from Pakistan enter into India and kill 26 people. They didn't kill any women or children. They just focused on men. They walked up to those men and said, "What is your religion?" And if they answered Hindu, they got shot right in front of their family. Spiritual, religious warfare at its worst. But it's not all going to be bad, of course. The battle between evil needs to be against good. We also have the angels, the guardian spirits, the deities coming to help as well. There was a movie created about 20 years ago. It's a perfect metaphor for the event we're entering into, which is Constantine, the movie with Keanu Reeves. And synchronistically, right as Neptune entered Aries, I heard that they're possibly, or maybe already are, making Constantine 2. And Constantine is a superhero of sorts that does battle with demons in the underworld. So what will happen between India and Pakistan over the next week or two as we hit this last wave? The stinger of the scorpion? Well, yeah, I'm a little concerned, I'm not going to lie. People are more lunatic and they have nukes. It's like, oh my God. I'm not trying to be alarmist here, but it's also important not to completely bury our heads in the sand and not realize that, this is a pretty tenuous situation. There are very beautiful, powerful, life-enhancing, transformative ways of working with this event, of course, always. But we don't shy away from the dark. And when we're looking at Scorpio, Mars, Pluto, there's definitely some darker potentials. If you didn't see my video on Neptune and Aries, I highly recommend it. There's a lot of good information in there. Wait till the end of this video. You'll see a little thumbnail pop on your screen and you can transition over to that one. When I was talking about Mars and Pluto in my previous video, I described how I looked at about 7 or 8 countries, and of the countries I analyzed, the Mars-Pluto was hitting China and the president of China the hardest by far. I didn't look at India and Pakistan, but yeah, China is experiencing peak intensity. In what way that will manifest, I have no idea, but keep your eyes peeled. Each time we have a full moon event, it's important to contemplate the sign that the sun is in as well, which is Taurus, because the moon is opposite the sun. So we have this interplay or natural tension between opposing signs of Scorpio and Taurus. Not only that, the sun is forming a very tight conjunction with Uranus in the sky right now, which means from our perspective here on planet Earth, it looks as though the sun and Uranus are holding hands in the sky. And Uranus creates a certain spice of unpredictability with this event. It's the planet of shock and surprise. Expect the unexpected. And there's also this feeling of excitement associated with Uranus. And if we combine it with these other events, there's this eager anticipation. It's like, what's going to happen next? I can't take my eyes off the road. The biggest theme, of course, is going to be the Scorpio interplay with the 2 rulers of Mars and Pluto, which really drills down on that feeling of intensity. But it's important to contemplate, again, the opposition to Taurus. And if we can lean into Taurus, we can find a balance between these opposing signs. It's really a useful strategy moving forward. Scorpio is the great god of intensity and complexity. Taurus, on the other hand, is the great god of simplicity and peace. One concept I talk a lot about on these videos is, especially when we're talking about emotional states of consciousness, is like attracts like and opposites repel. Okay, so Scorpio, the planet of drama, people are more lunatic over the next week or so, more reflexive, more operating from how they feel instead of rational thought. Again, generalization here. Drama begets more drama. It creates that attractor field within the world of drama. So the more people who are functioning from that reflexive state are creating more drama and begetting more of that in the world. Conversely, more of us that are manifesting, cultivating more simplicity and peace, Taurus style, peace begets peace. And this has been scientifically proven over and over and over again. They did a study in Washington, D.C., where a group of meditators informed people in Washington, D.C. that we're going to do this group meditation there in the city, a meditation for peace, about 1,000 of us. And we will reduce crime in Washington, D.C. by about 25% over the summer. And of course, the police of Washington, D.C. laughed at the concept, but they said, go right ahead. Why not? They showed up, they did the group meditation, and boom, right on target. Over the course of the summer, crime reduced 25%. The power of collective consciousness is profound. You create more peace within, more peace around you, and if we get enough of us doing that, especially during this time, it will diffuse some of the more intense aspects or manifestations of this and could potentially even stop war in some cases. So far, I've been discussing how these events affect humanity as a collective, what we're learning together now. But if we want to get more granular, and this is really what evolutionary astrology is good at, is the evolutionary question: how can I work with these energies on a personal level for my own betterment and evolution? So we have the Scorpion's stinger, which represents emotional and psychological toxins within our subconsciousness, which tend to be felt a little bit more intensely during events like this. So again, leaning more into Taurus, recognizing Scorpio is in the mix, the stinger tends to sting. But instead of getting caught up in the drama of that reflex, okay, to return to peace, to return to simplicity. Taurus being the most sensual of the signs, of the senses, of the body, of this monkey body, returning our conscious awareness into the body to try to create peace within that body instead of the tumultuous expression of Scorpio. Now, next to that Taurus sun, again, is Uranus, and I originally introduced Uranus as more of a shocking presence, a disruptive presence, which it absolutely is. But it's also a very ingenious and innovative planet. And on a personal level, it represents the process of individuation, which is to be a truer version of yourself and to naturally question the received wisdom or cultural norms and expectations about what is a proper way to express emotions, or what are emotions, what should our relationship with emotions be, how should we heal from trauma, questions like this. So a good evolutionary question to ask yourself is, on my quest for peace, taking this long journey from complexity to simplicity, how can I leverage techniques that may be considered more experimental or perhaps even foreign to what I normally think is a proper way of doing this? If I think of trauma or just stress energy correlated with the body, the concept of, stress and trauma and emotions can kind of get trapped in the body, in the tissues of the body. Have you ever seen a horse? I love using the imagery of animals because Taurus is the animal spirit. You ever see a horse just kind of shake, his legs shake? Well, he's releasing tension and tightness within his body. The horse isn't going to psychotherapy. He has a natural instinctual way of releasing that, of doing the tension dump. Now, humans don't naturally do that, have that instinctual way of releasing tension from the body, but there are powerful tools that do that. Makes me think of some forms of Qigong. They actually have a practice called trembling horse, where they shake the body as a meditation technique. Some forms of dance are really good to release trauma from the body. That's a good strategy now too, but more Uranian dance, which is to say wild, erratic, with no sort of premeditation, just let yourself rip. Makes me think of trauma release exercises, where you can really target that psoas muscle that's deep in our body with specific exercises and tire it out. And then you lay down and your body will naturally shake, especially that muscle group. People have reported major breakthroughs, and it's very relaxing, and you return to peace. Again, the spirit of Taurus is peace. How can we create more peace attractor fields? Because peace begets peace. Other options would be like somatic experiencing or emotional freedom technique or EMDR. The list goes on and on and on. But these are all body-centered experimental forms of releasing trauma, triggering peace within, which is a very powerful evolutionary intention during this time. So I realize the energy is intense. We're kind of having this last hurrah, this last stand of this 6-month-long event, which is really hitting a crescendo, especially with the wars going on in the world right now. A new one has just popped up. And it's so easy to get trapped in this fear state of consciousness and kind of doom and gloomy energy, which is part of Scorpio as well. But if we can somehow, in the face of that challenge, just kind of turn it on its head and say, look, I'm going to pivot. Even if the worst is true, I consciously choose this instead. I consciously choose simplicity. I consciously choose peace. I consciously choose to return my conscious awareness to my body to generate that inner peace instead of becoming utterly lunatic. These are the core evolutionary intentions, with the goal being to expand our consciousness.